I'm just going to give you a quick introduction. This is the Ball State University ARC program. This is ARCH602 or 620. I keep saying 602. Pro practice class. And so all of our students here are Masters of Architecture candidates. Some attended Ball State for undergrad, some not. So we're starting off second session of the semester, and like as you and I talked about, we're gonna do a semester project, which is basically start something and pitch it at the end. To sum up in a sentence. So let me introduce you really quickly to the class. So this is Todd Redding. Todd's the CEO and president of Charrette Venture Group, which means he leads CVG, Charrette Venture Group. He leads the organization, and he's responsible for guiding the vision and growth, so true CEO level. But he also works directly with all of the CVG investment partners. And CVG, what they do is they're a venture capital firm that invests in design firms, and they call all those firms that they invest in their investment partners. So Todd works with those firms, coaching principals and staff on leadership development, best management practices, and talent recruiting and retention. And one of the reasons, other than the fact that Todd's a friend and I used to work with Todd, other than that fact, I wanted to bring him on because in 2014, right?
Right.
In 2014, Charrette Venture Group started the Architecture Business Plan competition. It's got a direct correlation, of course, to your semester project because, and we'll talk about this, but the idea was if I wanted to pitch a business plan, I'd put together a plan, I'd submit, there were multiple submissions due over the course of the competition. If I made finals, I would pitch it to their jury, so to speak. You're familiar with that, obviously. And then maybe I would come away with a large cash prize and the potential of working with Charrette Venture Group. As I put into the notes for today, I just published them, so I don't expect that you've looked at them, but as an example, and correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, but as an example, there may be a firm in Indianapolis that wants to grow, shows huge upside, huge growth potential, but they don't know how to grow. So they may turn to Charrette Venture Group and say, hey, would you help us grow? And Charrette would look at them, CVG would look at them and do some analysis of their business and everything and say, yeah, we're interested in investing in you and helping you grow. They'd come to an agreement, and over the course of an agreed upon number of years, CVG would help that firm grow, and in return, Charrette Venture Group would take a percentage of revenue from that firm as their payback. So at the end of the agreement, this firm has grown. They've come to some level of success that was defined early on, and Charrette Venture Group has grown because they recovered a portion of that firm's revenue through the process. So that's the trade-off in that particular investment model they work in.
Jeff, I'm going to move inside. I am literally getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. I don't know why.
We've got somebody with an Ant-Man t-shirt on. Maybe you should have like Mosquito Man t-shirt on.
That would be fantastic.
So Todd is in Grinnell, Iowa.
I am. All right, I'm good.
Well, okay. No mosquitoes inside.
Mosquitoes inside.
So can you just start out telling us maybe why start an architecture business plan competition?
Sure. Well, let me start off. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to be with you guys tonight. I know that it's 6 o'clock your time on a Wednesday evening. I'm sure you all dreamed of just sitting in a classroom for a few hours listening to a boring guy talk about his company. So I'll try to make it as entertaining as I can. But I really want you all to ask me questions and make this interactive, so that your time is really, it's really valuable. Charrette Venture Group was founded by an architect, Matt Ostanik, got his architecture degree from Iowa State University. And he was practicing architecture, and he was kind of junior in the firm. So, he had to be the one when there were edits to plans. He'd have to make 5 versions of these edits and take one to the engineer and one to the client and one to so-and-so. They'd make edits. He'd gather them all back up and come back to the firm and do all of that duplicative work. And he felt like there had to be a better way. This is in the late 1990s, early 2000s. So Matt invented a software called Submittal Exchange that was the first web-based platform for architects, engineers, and customers to exchange documents. And it just so happens that this is at the sort of the explosion of these web-based tools. And so he grew it to about 30 or 40 employees. Then he sold the company to Textura Corp, the 3rd largest construction software company in the world, and stayed on board. He sold it for stock in that company that eventually went public. So Matt did what we read about and many tech pros try, but he did it very successfully. So one of the things he wanted to do with his wealth was he saw during this process that all of these small architecture firms were pretty poorly run as a business. And architects, as you all know, they don't get a lot of business training in school, right? There's a lot of attention focused on theory and design. Not many people tell you how to run a business. And we're talking thousands, like the majority of the industry. We predict that 70 to 80% of firms under 20 employees are underperforming because of business leadership. So he decided to put some of his wealth towards addressing that need, and we created Charrette Venture Group in 2014. And one of the things that he did to test whether he was onto something or not, whether there was any interest in this topic, was he started the architecture business plan competition. And he built a website. He did a $10,000 prize, did some rules, recruited some jurors, authors, people influential in the industry. And in the first year, we had over 150 submissions. And so he ran the competition, had a reception during the National AIA convention, and packed the room, and off and running we were going. He confirmed that there indeed is in the industry a need for business-related services, and there is an interest in creating stronger businesses. And so we formed our company, and more formally I joined in January 2015 and started to assemble this team of professionals. I'm not an architect at all. I have an MBA from Northwestern, have run and started companies most of my career. But people on my team are, like Jeff, experienced architects, and they understand the architecture space better than anybody. So we work with small firms all over the country. We've been virtual since our beginning, and we help these firms do everything from rebranding to building websites. We coach them on how to manage their company. We help them with recruitment, financial planning, all of the functions of running a business except design. We don't get involved in, whether they should, I don't even know what to say. I can't draw a square, whether they should do a pitched roof or not. We get involved in all of the business functions of running a firm. So that's us.
So that's a great overview, and it's a great example of an architect seeing a need kind of outside of what you would normally think of in terms of client service, and then building a company around that. So that's why you started it. So if we look at the history, the several years of the business plan competition, maybe start with what are some of the most exciting outcomes of the competition?
Yeah. Well, you have the winner of the 2000 and I think it's 16 competition is in Indianapolis. Delve Design, Amanda and Jeremy Waylu. Highly encourage you all to get to know that firm. They are a rising star in my opinion, and extremely well run, a great business. But they won the competition that year, and it was always really exciting to see the participants in the competition and to work with them going through creating their business plan. And I got calls countless times over the years from firms that would say, we'd say, I'm sorry you didn't make the finalist list. And they would say, this was worth it. This inspired me to sit down and do this hard work. Because if you're running a firm, you're getting pulled in 1,000 different directions. And people just don't take the time to do this really important work, of thinking about where do we want to be in 5 years? How are we going to get there? What goals are we going to put in place to get us there? What metrics are we going to use to measure whether we're doing it or not? You guys spend a lot of time designing buildings. Well, this is the same thing. It's just designing your business, right? It's creating the plan for how we're going to build this business. And the competition really inspired people to sit down and do that important work and be committed to it. Whereas in other cases, they didn't have an incentive necessarily in their mind to sit down and do it.
What was the most common struggle that firms had when they were putting all the different stages of documentation together and applications together?
Yeah, I find both when we're dealing with the competition and when, we're just working with the firms that we work with, architects have such a creative mind that the biggest thing they struggle with is where they need to spend their time. How much time they need to spend on some things versus other things. I mean, I finally had to, Jeff, you probably don't know the firm. I think they came on after you had left, but we actually fired a firm, and one of the reasons we fired them is it's a husband-wife team, and I finally, after 2 weeks, I finally had to look at them and say, we're not spending another minute on your philosophy statement. We're not spending another minute on your philosophy statement. Nobody gives a crap about your philosophy statement. Stop wrestling with this philosophy statement that they were going to put on their website. I mean, they'd spent 2 weeks going back and forth over this thing. It's like, nobody cares, Put that aside for a second. We've got much more important things to deal with. So it's kind of how you allocate your time. When you're running a business, the things are very different than when you're doing a design project. The things that you need to focus your time on, how you prioritize your time. Firm owners, if you ever own your own firm, one of the things you need to realize is that firm owners spend less than 50%. I want to say at the most 40% of their time is on design and billable projects. So 40% of your time is going to be spent doing the stuff you're in school right now learning how to do. 60% of your time is going to be spent on stuff that has nothing to do with what you're learning right now. It's going to be dealing with lawyers, accountants, employees, banks, customers, paying bills, running the business. And it's very difficult for architects who have started small firms. It's very difficult for them to, first of all, accept that. And second of all, of that 60%, where do I put my attention? And we saw the same struggle in firms that were a part of the competition. They'd really, really wrestle with some parts of the plan, and then there would be no financial projections. And you can't have a business plan without financial projections. Or they'd have unrealistic financial projections, like they were going to grow by 100% every year for 5 years. Where? How? Show me the strategy for how you're going to do that and why. Those were the most common challenges that we see and that we saw during the competition itself.
Well, now that you've scared them all off, and my phone's lighting up because they're all dropping the class. So
don't drop the class. Stick with it. I mean, if you want to run your own business, that's it. If you want to spend 90% of your time doing design work, go work for Gensler. Go work for HDR. But if you want to run a business, you better be ready to spend a lot of your time doing business related activities.
is there a, let's just say that this class is very similar to the architecture business plan competition. Is there a, say, a 5-step process or something like that that they should think about when they're formulating their idea? So let me back that up half a step. So what I've charged them with is to decide. They're going to go it alone, they're going to team up with some partners in the class, or they're going to lobby to have the entire class do one business plan. And they've got to make a decision by next week on that. So knowing that, do you have any advice for them on deciding what they're going to do, how they're going to form a team, anything like that, a starting point?
Well, I think what you all as a group need to kind of decide on is, do you want to create something? And I know we're talking in a hypothetical world here, but I talk to sole proprietors, it seems like every day. And do you want to create something that theoretically would live beyond you, right? Would last beyond you as an individual? If the answer is no, then do it alone. Be a sole proprietor and work your butt off for 40 years, and then when you're done, turn the lights off and lock the door and walk away. But if you want to build something that you're going to nurture younger talent behind you, and you're going to eventually sell to them or transition out of ownership, and that entity is going to live on forever, well, then you should all do it as a group. And if you want to create, and I'm talking about creating a business here, so I know. So you're a class working on a hypothetical project, but if you were a group of people talking to me about whether you should start a business or not, the sole proprietor thing is great, and you can be happy and you can design what you want to design. You're not gonna make as much money, and you're gonna struggle with all of the stress of being on your own, but it's you. That's all you have to worry about. Or if you want to grow to 15 to 20 employees and have it be something that lasts beyond you, then great, do that. What you should not do is create an entity that is 5 employees, 3 to 5 employees. That is the single greatest risk area, and it's why you see small firms break up every 5 years and splinter off, and partnerships break up and everything, because at 3, 4, or 5 employees, you're not big enough to hire administrative staff to start to take some of the BS off your plate. And you're so small that the volatility of your revenues is so up and down. One big project gets put on hold, one key employee leaves, you're screwed. You're laying awake at night worrying about how you're going to survive. So just don't do that. That's my advice. I'm full of good news, aren't I? I wish I could see if you guys are smiling or not.
I got 2 more messages. So again, thinking back to the business plan competition, can you just describe the process?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So we assemble a group of jurors, typically 5 or 6. In this most recent round, Art Gensler was a juror. That was a riot. We look for, well-known names and authors and, influencers in the field. Art's over 80, and he has this administrative assistant, Belinda. And so Belinda has to figure everything out for Art. So Art has this office in San Francisco, and sits up in this tall building, but he's so not technically savvy. So we'd send him all the PDFs of the plans, and, we get all the jurors get on a conference call. Everybody, Art would turn on his Zoom, and it'd be like upside down and, black or something. And we say, Art, you need to, turn your thing. And then he'd go, Belinda! I'd call Belinda. She'd come running in, and she'd fix whatever whatever's going on. And then she'd go out of the room, and they'd be like, okay, we're going to look at the plans that we emailed everybody. And then Art would go, plans? Where are the plans? And they go, Belinda! And Belinda would run in and give him the plans. So it was a little disruptive this year. But initially, we assembled this group of jurors that are all really interesting people. And kind of get them on board, and then we have a timeline for submissions. So, it usually is October, November is the deadline for registration. And we've done it a couple of different ways over the years, but this was the most common. We wanted people to register for it. So just first name, last name, email address. Yes, I'm a licensed architect. Yes, I have a business. And, yes, I'm willing to draft a plan or something. And then that group, we would market to that group to meet the next deadline, which would be the submission of your executive summary. So we get all these executive summaries, and we turn those over to the jurors, just as kind of an FYI. And then you'd have a deadline for the full, complete business plan. So the idea was to kind of gradually get them to build this plan instead of overwhelming them with, okay, give us your full plan by this deadline, which architects, I know present company excluded, architects in general procrastinate worse than anybody I've ever met. So, undoubtedly at midnight, no matter what deadline I'd set, midnight of that deadline would be like a wave of executive summaries. And then the next deadline, a wave of business plans. So we try to kind of break it up into these sections. And then we get all of that and we turn it all over to the jurors. They'd go through it and they'd select, sometimes we did, semifinalists and then finalists and then winner. When we were really at our height of doing it, we would fly all of the finalists to the AIA convention, and we'd pay for their hotel, their plane ticket, their meals, and then they would physically present to the jury their plans. The jury would then select the winner, and we would announce, all the finalists would be at the reception. We would announce the winner and then hand them a $10,000 check. That's 2016, 17, we did that. We got so busy. I think it was 18. We skipped 19. I mean, this project costs us about $50,000 a year to do. And so, and what the purpose of it was really to elevate this conversation about, business planning. But it was also, now all of these firms that are going through this process are leads for us, right? They're potential clients for us. So that's the process that we went through for it. Really well received and was successful, but a very expensive endeavor.
I realized that as you were just describing that, you and we talked about the business plan, and we're on the same page. We know what we're talking about. But can you just describe what was included in the business plan that the firms or the potential firms submitted?
Yeah, it took a lot of different shapes because we gave them helpful information, but we did not give them requirements. Like I didn't require a pro forma, and does everybody know what a pro forma is? It's a financial model that you can change and tweak to see how different scenarios play out and what the impact those have on your financial picture. We didn't tell them to create a pro forma, but a business plan without a pro forma is like, it doesn't mean anything. You got to show me how financially this is going to make sense. So, we would get business plans where you could tell that the entrant believed that doing something outside of traditional architecture was a strategic advantage. So they all wanted to buy property and develop their own property, right? And you're going to fall down that trap one of these days. And if you want to remember one thing from tonight, remember that I said, don't do it. I said, don't do it. And there are reasons for that. We'd have a whole nother class on why you should not be in the development business. But, they would put things like that in their plans. We got a lot of plans that almost sounded like nonprofits. Like they wanted to be in community-based design. They wanted to impact the area around them, around their own community, and do it at a discounted price and make money. And, a lot of times it just really didn't make sense. In many, many cases, there was a disconnect between what we heard in the mission, vision, and values section and the financial details section. There was just a disconnect. It was not a realistic view of what they were going to achieve. But the plans took all kinds of shapes. One year we required a video, and that was comical. I mean, if you guys could imagine, if I asked all of you to go create a video where you describe your business plan to me. You can imagine the videos we got. Some of them were fruity, some of them were good, some of them were funny, but we decided not to do that again because it was a fruitless exercise. It didn't give us any more insight into the plan, and it made the people, the entrants, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, even when we interviewed them, it made them uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly right.
Which, you mentioned the not-for-profit. One of the finalists in Philadelphia, whichever year that was actually 501c3, right?
Yeah, that's right. The jurors tore them apart.
So think to the finalists and the pitches. Is there any secret sauce, or is there anything that you could point to as you think across the different years, the different finalists and the different winners? Is there something about the pitch, about the idea? Is there some magic in there that points to the winner?
Yeah. So here's some more bad news for you. That
Only got one student left.
Here's some more bad news. In the architecture space, I've learned that the word sales is often very negatively construed. That people cringe when I use the word sales. They want to make it pretty and call it business development or whatever. The reality is you're going to be selling yourself. You're going to have to sell your ideas. You're going to have to sell your talent. You're going to have to sell, your knowledge. You're going to have to convince other people to pay you for what you bring to the table. And that fundamentally is sales. You can make up whatever term you want, but that's what it is. So when you pitch your plan, or when you pitch your business to anybody that you're trying to get interested in you have to be able to sell it. And selling requires you to be passionate about what you're talking about, to believe in it, to know it inside and out, to be confident about it. That's what good salespeople do. And that's what you've got to do when you pitch any kind of business plan. So the best ones were the ones that, they were ready. They prepared, they rehearsed. If there were multiple people making the presentation, they didn't stumble around and look, is it my turn to talk or is it your turn? It was smooth, transitioned. Everybody knew what their role was. Those were the ones that were most effective, and those are the ones that impressed the jurors, and those are the ones that won the $10,000 check for sure.
Who was your, and I won't tell any of them, but who was your favorite winner?
Honestly, Delve was my favorite out of all of them. I was really impressed. Amanda and Jeremy and their partners did a phenomenal job. Now, they did a phenomenal job because Amanda is not an architect. She is a marketing professional. So Jeremy is the architect. So they have that mixture, right, of talent and it's marketing for them is a priority because Amanda's the spouse, right? She's an owner. So, it was just a great combination of people, and they did it with such polish, and they were my favorite.
What was the most outlandish submission you can remember?
Oh boy. I mean, we had a few that were just unrealistic financially. We had a few that wanted to combine architecture with sort of survey services and a whole array of auxiliary services that really, they were semi-connected to traditional architecture, but they weren't really it. So I can't say there were any that were just really outlandish. There were some that were unusual. So what was the one, Jeff, and he's still going today, he's building out of Quonset huts.
Oh, yeah, Earl Parsons.
Earl. Yeah, Earl. His was interesting and a finalist.
Yeah.
And his business is running right now.
Yeah, if I had to think back across the ones that I can remember, he's probably, other than than Delve, but yeah, he's probably the healthiest of a lot of the finalists.
So I'll tell you a little story, if I can. Can I digress, Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you guys will get a kick out of this. So my office manager, she's in Denver, and she does all of the planning. Like, she gets the restaurant for the reception, makes the reservations, picks the menu, just all of the stuff that goes into putting this thing together. And we have in the neighborhood of 150 to 250 people attend the reception. And they're all architects at the convention, right? So the last one that we did was in Las Vegas. And, Las Vegas is an interesting place, if any of you have ever been. And Sarah, she picked out 2 or 3 restaurants for us to take a look at, us meaning the leadership team at CVG. And we looked at them, kind of, made a choice. I'm kind of a food guy. I'm a part-time chef at the local restaurant. So I was really interested in the menu, and, we went through all the details. She picked this restaurant, it had good reputation, good reviews, set the whole reception up, and we had huge response, like I think 250 RSVPs, something like that. So the night comes around for the reception, and my wife and I and the founder of our company, Matt, and a few others we're getting an Uber to come over to the reception. And the the Uber turns into this massive parking lot with limousines just lined up to my right, and this giant sign, banner, whatever, the front entrance, and it's a strip club. It's a giant strip club. And I reach up to tap my Uber driver, and I'm like, "Sir, we're definitely in the wrong place." And my wife is looking at me like with this look, and I'm like, no, we're not having this at the strip club. And he goes, "Dude, this is the address you gave me." And he goes up to the front entrance, and there's these 2 big wooden doors. There's a minivan and people getting out of it that clearly are going to the strip club. And he pulls up, and right next to the entrance of the strip club is the restaurant. So this building used to be like a Lifetime fitness place. This strip club has an Olympic-sized swimming pool in it with poles in the swimming pool. And that's what I'm told. I didn't go in, but what they did was they turned 3/4 of the building into the strip club, and they still had like this, whatever it was, this auxiliary section. And this top-notch Mexican restaurant is in that section. Oh, I walk in the door, and Sarah, she's white as a sheet, and she says, "I swear to God, I didn't know." And I'm like, "It'll be okay, Sarah. They'll know if they go in the wrong entrance." It'll
Figure it out. Or it was one of the pitches. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, and Sarah will never ever live that down, I guess.
No, she will not.
Sarah is also one of the most wholesome human beings you've ever met in her life, so that it just adds a whole other layer of that to it. But so obviously, it was the architecture business plan competition. So you expect architecture businesses being. However, Matt's business that really started all of this, his software company was a departure in a way from architecture. What the very few guidelines that I've given the class are that you need to start a business. And we talked about the fact that you can pitch a traditional firm, you can pitch something that's not even an architecture firm. So do you have any advice, because we've got, I think 13 of us, for 13 people sitting here going, who is this guy that's making us do this competition? Do you have any advice for them in terms of how you decide what you want to build this semester?
Yeah, I would think about what you know about the architecture space and ask yourself, where are some of the greatest needs? I mean, so CVG exists because Matt saw this need for business related services in the architecture space. By the way, we're the only one in the world that does what we do. Like, I can't find a competitor when I try. There's just nobody that does what we do the way we do it. There's a bunch of these old stodgy, consulting companies like PSMJ. That's a bunch of old retired white men wearing suits that think that, that probably provide some good knowledge, but it's not who we are for sure. But what other needs are out there that you might build a business around? First, architecture firms today need such help with business development and marketing. They are just, Jeff knows this firsthand. They are so bad at it. There is a whole world of marketing automation software that, really fast growing companies in all sectors know a lot about. HubSpot's one of the best. There's Salesforce.com. There's all kinds of marketing automation that do everything from running your website to social media management to just everything under the marketing banner that you can think of. 99% of architecture firms have never even heard of marketing automation software, right? You could become the best firm at helping firms integrate marketing automation software in the world and probably be very successful at it. And there's all kinds, if you can get a hold of just a simple guide to an AIA convention showroom floor and look at the booths, skip all the products, people, the manufacturing product people, and look at all of the services and things that people are doing. There's companies that specialize in helping firms get tax credits, just historic preservation tax credits. There's firms that help them implement operational software. All kinds of things around helping firms be successful. There's all kinds of areas. I would encourage you to think about that. If you're thinking about something outside of a traditional architecture model, what other needs could you address in the space that you're very passionate about?
Yeah, the activity that we did last week was thinking about what problems architects can solve. Thinking beyond, it's just we design a bank or something like that. So we had a lot of really great ideas. And our guest speakers last week were, I don't know if you know Janine Chastain and Evelyn Lee, who's at Slack.
Yeah, I know Evelyn. Yeah.
Yeah. So they talked about their podcast, Practice Disrupted, and all of the people that they're doing and such. So, I'm leaving it open. They can decide what they want to do. They can decide how they want to do it, who they want to do it with. So,
well, amidst COVID, another thing to think about is, so I don't know if you all have heard that Twitter just broke their lease on their building in downtown San Francisco. So they're not renewing their lease. So the massive building in downtown San Francisco is now vacant, completely vacant. Google just notified all of their landlords that they are remaining virtual until the end of next year. Google. Salesforce will probably do the same thing. So downtown San Francisco currently is like a ghost town, whereas pre-pandemic, it took you an hour to get from the airport to downtown. So if you have any ideas of how commercial space, commercial real estate can be reinvented, you have the holy grail, because every metropolitan area in the country right now, and probably in the world, is really wrestling with the fact that we're not going back to normal anytime soon.
That's a really good point. And I think we talked about this a little bit last week. No matter who you are, no matter who your clients are, no matter what you do, everything has changed. Some things in a little way, some things in a big way. But think about that when you're thinking about opportunities to solve problems. Just like going back to the origin story of Matt and his software and then CVG. If I were in your shoes, I would start to explore what the new problems are, the problems that didn't exist. If we're in the United States, the problems that didn't exist, or at least we didn't know about or didn't realize on March 12th. You know, everything kind of shut down on the 16th. That's the direction that I would go. Any questions for Todd? We've kind of been over the map, but any questions for Todd?
I put them all to sleep.
Well, they're filling out their removal forms.
But I do want to say, since I gave you guys the sort of the horror story, you know, Amanda and Jeremy are a great example. If you went over and met them, I mean, they're building a profitable firm. You know, if you get a firm to 15 people, you can, you know, a 15-person firm is doing somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million a year in annual revenue. They're making, they're paying everyone market rate salaries. The partners, if one or two partners they're earning over $100,000 a year, and the firm is generating a profit of between $250,000 and $350,000 a year, a profit that they can pay bonuses out of, that they can put back into the business, that they can put into their retirement. You know, they're financially strong, and they're not working 70 hours a week. They are, you know, when they don't have to be in the office for something to happen. You know, we are working with firms that are achieving that level every day. It's definitely possible. It's worth the work, you know. And when you get to that level, you as a firm owner, you're kind of paying attention to the projects that you want to pay attention to, right? The ones that really excite you. And you're helping the firm go after the projects that really excite you and the kinds of things that you want to do. So, I mean, that's the home run. And it just takes a long time to get there. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of resources at your disposal to get you there. Certainly call CVG if you decide you want to get there, because we do it with firms all the time. But that's the good news.
And Delve is expanding, by the way. We can talk about that.
Yeah, I believe it. I talked to Amanda about, it was pre-pandemic, so it was probably 6 months ago, and it sounded like they were doing really well.
Yeah, there's it's kind of a trimmer that came the other day. Any questions? Any thoughts? Any curiosity about business plan competition, or what went into a business plan, or anything like that?
Yeah, please.
For me, would be asking the question of, as students, what can we be doing besides doing this typology of project? But as we start thinking ahead, like, what can we be doing? Are there resources for us to start getting into that mindset of what's going to happen after graduation? What do I want to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really would find a way, whether it's taking classes in the business school, or you know, looking for free resources online, or reading books. I can give you a lot of different business books to read, but get yourself as educated as you can about the business side of the equation. And when you're sitting in an interview, and you know, when a firm is interviewing you for a job, I want to be careful about saying this, but you want to test them as much as they're testing you, and you want to make sure this is a place that's not going to struggle to pay my paycheck. This is a place that the owner has got their head in the game. Now, if you're going to a place like Gensler, I get it. The problem with the giants is that, you know, you're there for 5 years and you feel like all you are is a cog in the wheel. You know, you're just a part of the machine. But if you're with a small to mid-sized firm, you have every right to say, were you profitable last year? You know, when was the last time you made wage cuts because, you know, you needed to control the budget? You know, Have you ever filed for bankruptcy? You know, things that really signal to you that this is a firm that the owner's got their head in the right place. Do you have a strategic plan? What are your, you know, where do you want this firm to be in 5 years? And what that does is signal to them that you're thinking about the business too. That makes you different than most of the other candidates they're going to interview, right? The other candidates are going to come in with their portfolio and talk about all the great things they design and how much they know Revit. And, you know, you're going to come in and say, were you profitable last year? Because I really want to be at a place that's a good business. The other thing to think about is if you come in a room, you're going to blow a firm owner away. If you come in a room and you say, is there any way I could be involved in business development and help you bring in new business? You would blow a firm owner away if you said that. You know, show them that you're interested in the growth of the firm, the health of the firm. You know, they're the ones that are laying awake at night worrying about payroll and all the problems they have with running a business. And if you come to the table sort of with awareness of that, that's going to really, really be valuable. And as you do your internships, look for internship possibilities where the owners develop a culture of transparency and they're showing their employees what the finances are of the firm. I mean, they don't have to show salaries, but here's what our firm did last year in revenue. This is what our goal is this year. This is what our expenses are. You know, they have, if they feel like you just need to sit down and shut up and draw and let me deal with all of that, don't go work for that firm. That's old school mentality, and they're going to fail. I promise you, they're going to break up in 5 years. Is that helpful? Sorry to get on my soapbox. If you want any, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. You in the pink shirt, I think, pink.
Sure.
Well, public speaking seems to be a big part of like selling your pitch. How would you suggest getting more comfortable public speaking?
Say that last part. Getting more comfortable doing what?
Public speaking.
Oh, public speaking. Got it. It's all about practice. You know, you have no reason to be nervous if you're prepared. You know, I know different people are comfortable with public speaking in different ways. I am actually an off-the-charts introvert. My Myers-Briggs says that I am an asshole and should just sit in a cave and not talk to anybody. But I have gotten to where I am because, you know, it's just a ton of practice. We do speaking engagements all the time. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. But you know, no matter, I mean, Jeff could tell you, I think he was there in Atlanta. They gave me a 7 a.m. slot on a Friday morning. Now, Thursday night at an AIA convention, for those of you who have been there, Thursday night's the night we party. I mean, party pretty hard. And so I had a Friday morning 7 a.m. talk. And Sarah was there to help get me set up. And I told Sarah, I'm like, Sarah, if we have 10 people, I'll be shocked. I come and we get there about 6:15, 6:30 to kind of set up. And there's this massive room. It has 2 screens on either side of the stage and all these chairs. And there's the lady who's organizing, the AIA person is at the front. I'm sorry, I've got to be in the wrong room. Can you show us where? And Sarah's eyes are big. And she says, no, this is your right room. And I said, it's 7 a.m. on a Friday morning. And she said, we have 400 people registered for your talk. And I said, 400? Sarah and I had brought a stack of like 20 business cards to hand out. Like, you know, I mean, we were like nowhere prepared. And I mean, I came the closest to hyperventilating and freezing up before they introduced me than I've ever been. I mean, I am sweating. I'm backstage, like, you know, waving, trying to get air on my face so I don't pass out. So the point of my story is no matter how much of this you've done, you know, if you're not prepared for what you're walking into, that's when things go wrong. It turned out to be an excellent speech, or at least that's what I was told, but I didn't pass out. Does that help with what you can do? And I know it's not brilliant insight. It's just kind of common sense, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Yeah, in the back.
The idea of transparency within a firm is an interesting one. How do we form firms handle it when they're not doing so well, and keeping employee morale still up, knowing that that's going to be happening or things are going to be changing.
Did you hear that?
I heard most of it, but could you repeat it, Jeff?
So the idea of transparency is an interesting idea, but how do firms handle it when things aren't going well in terms of what are they sharing? How do they keep up employee morale? Even you're showing a spreadsheet and it's headed towards the bottom right corner. How do they handle transparency in the bad times?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's like, it's easy to be transparent when we're growing and making money, right? How do you handle it when it's bad? And I'm going to tell you, it's my theory that you lose more employees by not creating a culture of transparency, by having this shielded, I can't show you my secret sauce or you'll take it away. You lose more employees with that method than you do by sharing openly and honestly and having this transparency even in bad times. Because people leave when you have this shielded, don't look at my books kind of attitude. People are they don't feel engaged. You guys want to feel a part of making a difference in something, right? You want more than a paycheck. You want to feel like you're contributing. And when you don't feel that way for years, you leave. You can find other places where you can feel that way. So firms handle it, badly unless they're with us or have some other, counsel helping them through it. They stumble through it. We work a lot with them on messaging and how we're talking with employees. And, like when COVID first hit, I bet 6 of our firms cut salaries by 15 to 20%. And we went through a whole exercise with them preparing for that about how to talk about it and what's the threshold before we start to lose people and how much money does it really save. So, my answer is it doesn't really change. The way you handle it doesn't change. Good times are bad. You're open and honest and transparent with your employees. And, they are going to stay with you. Your valuable employees, your good talent. For the most part, if you're making them feel a part of the organization and like they are a contributor, they're going to stay with you through the bad times as well.
And let me back up Todd's theory with a little psychology in that people will move towards certainty and away from uncertainty. And moving towards certainty or certainty doesn't mean that it's necessarily positive, right? It's just, okay, now I know what the truth is. And we could, not to make any of this political, but if we look at what's going on around the country, think about what happens when people are very unsure about what's going on and how their attitudes change and the decisions they make versus when they're very sure, they're reassured. Again, it's not necessarily, I can be really sure that things are bad, but at least I know, right? And that makes me, in a weird way, it makes me feel better. I know how bad it is. Any other questions? Anybody else? Question for Todd?
Jeff, you've got my email address. Feel free to pass that out. I'll write it on the board or something. Anybody wants to talk, chat, and not just now. If you get out in the world and you're interviewing for a firm or considering a firm and you want our advice, drop me an email. You're gonna have to remind me, hey, you spoke to Jeff Eckel's class and made an offer to be there. We love talking to architects every day. The other thing I would recommend is, so Rena Klein, our vice president for investment partnerships, she literally did write the book, the Architect's Guide to Small Firm Management. You can find it on Amazon. Unfortunately, it's pricey. It's not Rena that's doing that. It's the publisher. It's like $60. You can find a used copy, or a couple of you split the cost of it or something. It is a really, really good book on the business of running a small firm. And she's got metrics in there. She's got sample chart of accounts, the way you set up your accounts, how you handle ownership transition. Just all kinds of good stuff. And she's she's brilliant. She's been a good mentor of mine for a long time.
It is great. Tell her hello, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, we'll let Todd go. We got another one. Go ahead.
Yeah, please.
What's your opinion on ESOP models for architecture firms?
Great question. Do you know of an ESOP?
I used to work for one.
Oh, great question. You know, my opinion, it matches the research. It's a 50-50 shot, you know. Half of them win and half of them lose. It is not the secret formula for a firm. I'd much rather see an ownership plan that has basically an automatic program in place that shows talent that once you've been at a firm for so many years, once you are approved by the board of directors or management, whatever it may be, you have an option of buying into the firm. And this is what that means. This is really important because so many young architects think that they're going to go work for a firm and they strive for ownership and they have no idea what that means, right? The only thing ownership means is that if there are distributions paid out at the end of the year, you get your percentage of those distributions, and that someday the firm will have to buy back your ownership or somebody will buy it, and that's when you get paid out, right? If you own 10% of a firm, you don't have any say in how that firm runs or operates. So be really careful about people who kind of pat you on the back and say, one day this could all be yours, and just say, back off, man. Tell me what that means. Tell me how all this being mine is going to mean anything to me. So ESOPs are, a mechanism to achieve people feeling like they own a part of the company. And it's a structure that that sort of informs how that all works. But I'm not a huge fan because I'm really not a believer that everybody should be an owner or everybody should have a say in the governance of the firm. Does that make sense? I ran a 115-person manufacturing company for 6 years, and we had all kinds of consultants tell us that we should be an ESOP. And the more we looked at it, it looked more like chaos than it did, leadership.
Any other questions?
All right, I'm going to go pour a cocktail. It's cocktail hour here. You guys have a great rest of your evening. Go Ball State. And drop me an email if I can ever be of help to any of you.
All right. Thank you, Todd. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Biggest takeaways, anybody? Go ahead.
So creating something, you want to create something that satisfies the need. What do you think business model, how to help architects out, what are the needs?
Yeah, that's a great one. You got to create something that satisfies the need, because tie that with the other thing that he said, or one of the other things that he said was, you've got to sell this, right? How do you sell something that there's no need for? Right? That gets into luxury, right? What's an example? A swimming pool or something. You literally don't have a need for a swimming pool. It's a nice to have, but in a time like this, that's really hard to sell luxury, right? So that's a really great point. Another big takeaway, anybody? Go ahead.
Just the business side of architecture. Start thinking of that, even if you don't want to be a business owner. But
Yeah.
think of that.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I think I said last week, my goal for you in this semester is that you leave this semester being, let's just call it on the surface, let's call it business savvy, so that you can go interview at a firm and you can ask intelligent questions. Because it really doesn't matter to me if you want to be a firm owner one day. Because like Todd said, there's pros and cons to all of this, and you need to be able to weigh those things. But I'll give you an example. I didn't mention this to Todd, but he knows June Jewell as well. She's a consultant. She's a CPA, former Deltec rep. She's speaking at an event that I'm speaking at later this month, and so I'm interviewing all the speakers. June's the title of June's talk is how to get your employees to think and act like business owners. Now, June's focus in her consulting is she also wrote a book called Find the Lost Dollar. Her focus is getting architecture and engineering firms to the point of profitability, because like Todd said, most aren't. Think about that with the context that she's speaking on how to get your employees to think and act like owners. If you go in an interview with the firm and you go, listen, I want to know about this, I know this, I'm interested in this, all these business kind of things, that makes you more valuable in the marketplace, right? Whether you want to be a firm owner or not, going in with business acumen, with an understanding, hey, I went through this class, I don't have to say that, but I went through this class where we actually built a business. There's a lot of value in someone. I'd hire you. Heck yeah, I want someone that knows how this works instead of someone that thinks, well, I'm going to come in, I'm going to work 40 hours a week, and I'm going to go home with no understanding of the implication of anything, right? So I like that one a lot. Another big takeaway, anybody? Go ahead.
I like how he was talking about that in the competition that he runs, it encourages business owners to take the time to actually think about it and go through the motions that they may not have done before.
Yeah, he's exactly right about that. I mean, we used to get all these questions and all these comments, and it's, you know, take whatever firm that you work for or have worked for, and think about those owners. You know, one of the things we talk about a lot is, especially in smaller firms, you know, he's talking about 5 and less and all of that. There's this common term called the 17 hats. These firm owners are wearing 17 different hats, not at the same time. It's, you know, in this 15 minutes, I got to put this one on, and the phone rings, I got to take it off, I got to put this other one on, and do all of this. And so there's very little time. You've got to prioritize it, of course. Going through that process for those firms force them to really think through the things that are important to being a good business. And there are a lot of architects that I talk to that aren't real thrilled with the idea of getting better at doing business. I don't want to pay attention to that. I don't want to learn how to do that. And I get it. I don't either, to be completely honest with you. I went to the same school you're going to now. I graduated with architecture degrees and worked in architecture firms. I would, especially when I was your age, I'd much rather be designing something, right? But here's the thing. If you're in business, if you have a design business, what allows you to continue in business? It's being good at the business. Having a good, solid, strong architecture firm gives you the time and the ability to practice your art, gives you the time and the ability to practice your craft. If you don't have that foundation, eventually the ability to do that goes away. And so that's really important that people take the time to dig in and learn this stuff. And it's just like structures class, right? An architect that doesn't want to build a strong business, that doesn't want to pay attention to that, that just wants to design, or, you know, whatever their story is, they're basically trying to build from the 15th floor up, right? No foundation underneath it. Just like structures class, you got to build a strong foundation. You've got to understand where how your loads are being distributed, and all those things. It's the exact same thing. It's just dollars. It's just management.